All right, welcome back, everybody. Julie and I are having a great discussion about problems in the construction industry related to safety compliance and preventable accidents that still occur. It's costing the industry $10 billion a year just in the United States. So, Julie, as a construction project manager professional, what is the industry doing for safety compliance as a whole? Is there an industry standard and is it adequate?
Yes, so currently we are using a technology called Construct Secure, and it is not really as effective as it could be. So the way that the app, I guess, works is that all of the contractors are entered onto the app, and there are standards that the company has to follow, that each superintendent or project manager has to conduct certain amounts of safety walks each week or each month. And those safety walks usually consist of a superintendent, for example, walking around the site and looking for safe or unsafe acts. So usually if they see an unsafe act, they're supposed to report it into the system under the trade that's conducting the violation. Usually this gets overlooked a lot because people don't want to, snitch on themselves or on other trades within the project. It kind of creates tensions within the project when a trade gets a safety violation by a superintendent. And so a lot of the safety reporting is usually on the positive side. So and so did this, and that's a positive safety violation. When safety violations get reported in the negative, usually it does create contention between the trades and the project leadership. So a lot of the time they get overlooked.
So how do like the individual workers feel about being told to download an app?
Well, a lot of them are a little resistant, especially if they know they're being tracked. But going back to what I was saying, everyone is tracked nowadays. It's unfortunate, but if I want to walk into my building and, if I work in a 30-story building, I'm being tracked. Like in order to enter into that building, I have to swipe a fob, I'm counted. And, going back to what I said, that construction is a major, major industry that still does not conform to a lot of the safety regulations and accountability regulations that all the other industries have to abide by. So although, it's kind of difficult to bring people who are hesitant and resistant into a, new technological tracking system, it's something that's going to happen.
But would you agree though that using software in general makes it easier than with previous methods? I mean, for everybody that's involved.
Oh, of course, yeah. Um, just having proper accountability. Going back to my example with the fire, that morning, that electrician could have said he had 39 people on site when he actually had 40. And so it takes the human error out of accountability, out of manpower, tracking, and that if 7:30 in the morning when everybody is on site, exactly who's on site, how many people are in each trade, and where most of the people are.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Okay, well, so let's end this compliance discussion for now. I've got more questions for you about the digital identity. What else have you used them for beyond compliance? Like, can you talk about like labor management or is anything like that stuff that you've done?
Sure, yeah. A lot of this digital tracking is useful in a lot of different ways. For example, if I'm working on a $30 million hotel, in the pre-con, we're able to take data from another $30 million or like project, 35, $40 million hotel project that the company may have done. We're able to take that data and transition it into estimating, into scheduling. Because we're able to track manpower, we're able to know exactly how many electricians it took to complete a $30 million project. So when we go to bid, we're creating more accurate estimating for the company, which means better profits. We're creating better schedules because we know exactly how many people it takes and how long it takes them to complete a project based off of the data tracking. And it just, at the end of the day, if used properly, it can really improve your bottom line.
So, I mean, it sounds like what you're really saying is that using systems in general, especially software systems, it really does address waste, and it keeps people kind of reading from the same sheet of music. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yes, that is correct.
Well, we talked about problems that safety compliance can get into without software. What about labor tracking? Is it really just kind of the same thing where I said that I had 40 workers, but only 38 actually showed up, and then thus the schedule was affected, and your company found out way down the line?
So an example where that could cause harm to a project is when you're paying a trade, you're paying them for more workers than they had on site. That goes back to a lot of projects require certified payroll, and if you're conducting certified payroll and submitting wrong numbers, it can end up coming back to you, and they find that you're submitting wrong numbers, and it can end up creating a lot more paperwork and a lot more time dedicated to having to go back to fix it and change it. And yeah.
So again, it really sounds like accountability is like a big concern on any construction site.
Yes, it's one of the few industries where you'll have hundreds of workers that are not accounted for.
And so again, but back to digital identity, how does that help with accountability? Like what exactly can you do? Can you like scan it, or what? How does that work?
There's scanning methods. So for example, on a digital badge software, they there is a GPS tracking on the badge. So once they enter into the location of the project, they're automatically accounted for. Once they leave the location, then they're clocked out for the day. This goes back, they're able to,
They're able
if
to get
they're,
better information, basically.
yeah,
That's
like,
really
and
what
it,
it sounds like.
yeah, they're in, and if a lot of them, if they're resistant to it, they're able to get a sticker on their hard hat where they could be scanned in. So, it eliminates the fear that some of the contractors have of being tracked. So there is methods away around being, tracked on your phone.
And I mean, it sounds like this would affect like the whole bottom line for really not just the owner and the contractor, but all of the subcontractors as well. Just because getting jobs done on time gets you more jobs, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, well, in your experience, like, what would you recommend like other people in your industry to use, like to solve problems like this? I mean, I feel like a lot of people just kind of take safety issues to be a given, right? So, what would you recommend?
I would recommend virtual badge. I've used it a lot on construction sites, and I think that it has been really helpful in tracking people and knowing exactly who's on site. Another thing in Boston, we have this Boston Jobs Residence Policy, the BRJP, or Resident Job Policy. It requires us to report data of who is working on site, how many females, how many minorities, how many residents are working on the projects, because the BRJP likes to increase those three demographics on projects, and they give us, percentages that we're expected to meet for each of those criterias. And for example, virtual badge has all that information in it. So it's just an easy transition to upload that information to the city and to meet their compliances. The city actually just recently got a lot more strict when it comes to reporting the information. They want they no longer accept late reporting. Any late reporting can result in fines up to $300 a day per project.
Wow. So as a manager for construction, I mean, it's probably like yet another type of paperwork that you have to deal with, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. Paperwork has a ton of paperwork to it.
So it's basically like being able to push a button and be able to answer their questions then, right?
Yes, and when used effectively, you can allow the BRJP personnel to access the project and they can get the data in real time.
Oh, interesting. So they could just log in and get the information themselves.
Correct.
Wow, that's really interesting. So how does the average worker interact with a system like this on a daily basis? Like what does, like, if I'm like a plumber, or if I'm just a worker on site, like what do I actually do?
Well, there really isn't much to do, as long as they use the GPS portion of it. They can just enter onto the site and exit the site, and they're tracked. If they have resistance to being tracked on their phone, then they use the QR code, they clock in, and then they clock out. It also helps a lot with community. Yep.
But for a worker though, that process is really not any different than having a punch card, right? So like as a worker, I wouldn't have to do anything radically different, correct?
No, of course not. You just show up to work with your phone on.
So it sounds pretty easy then, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like what would I normally do other than the punch card? Like what other systems are there?
Well, currently right now there is no punch card. It's all kind of honor system. In the morning, the foremans for each trade will come into the site trailer and they'll report how many people that they have on site for that day. And that gets reported into a log, a Excel sheet type of log, and then gets submitted to payroll. So if there's inaccuracies, a trade may be shorted on pay that week, or they might be overpaid.
That doesn't sound good for the company, right?
Exactly.
So I think we're getting close to being taking another break. This has been a great discussion so far. I think we'll continue our discussion when we get back about a few other problems that you encountered, maybe a crazy story or two that you've seen in the construction industry, and then we could talk a little bit about your military background and maybe some other ways that you've used technology or digital identity in the field.